Hello, I'm Ann Willett, Senior Pastor at Northaven Church. As a church that values social justice, Northaven has always believed that faith and justice go hand in hand. In our Northaven Voices interviews this month, we will feature church members and community leaders who will share their stories and insights on how we can continue to strive to be an anti-racist congregation. I hope you will enjoy.
Hi, Northaven friends, and welcome to Northaven Voices this week. I am Bob Roton, and we are continuing our conversations with church members and community leaders on sharing their stories on social justice issues. And so I am honored today to be interviewing Joanna Shields, who is a longtime member of Northaven. And hi, Joanna, and welcome.
Hi, good to be with you.
Oh, thank you. It's so good to be with you as well. And thank you for taking the time to be with us and let us talk to you about your stories and your history. First of all, Joanna, why don't you just share a little bit about yourself, your background, about your family, your passions, and why you joined why Northaven?
I was born in Texas, lived in Texas basically all my life. My father was a liberal Methodist preacher in the Southwest Texas Conference, so okay. I grew up with that background, and I sometimes tell people, sometimes the language doesn't bother me as much because I grew up demythologizing various things in the church. I moved to Dallas in 1963 with my first job, and 4 or 5 people told me, you need to check Northaven. And I did, and I joined in the fall of 1963. I was active in the single adult group here at Northaven, and that was a very significant group for me. I'm still in touch with a large number of the people who were a part of that group. Oh. Ken and I were married at Northaven in 1968. Our daughters grew up here in the church, and Ken and I were both teachers. I taught 7th, 8th, and 9th graders in the Richardson and Dallas school districts, and Ken is in the English department at SMU. Mm-hmm. So we've both have a long history of being concerned about social justice issues, and been involved to greater and lesser degrees depending on what was going on at the time. But that's always been a big part of Northaven.
So you've been a member of Northaven since 1963 then?
I joined in the fall of 1963. Wow. I sometimes think I'm sort of like a history book because there are a few who are longer term members than I, mm-hmm. but not very many. Mm-hmm. And so I always want to say I'm happy to share the history, but that doesn't mean that's that's the way we should be doing things now. We always have to speak to the current time.
Right. Well, I'm just, I did not know about your father. So, wow. So he was early on progressive theology.
Yes. I use the term liberal because that's the way he was described in his ministry, but today he would be called progressive. But he and his buddies kept things straight in the Southwest Texas Conference.
I bet you have some stories there too.
Oh yes.
Anyone you want to share that comes to mind?
I can't think of anything in particular right now, but I guess when the book burning was an issue in San Antonio, there was a big brouhaha with Maury Maverick coming to speak at the church, and the way the paper reported it was that only the age of the 2 gentlemen kept fisticuffs from being. It was he was outspoken and sometimes ruffled feathers.
Good for him.
Yep.
That's kind of what we want to do today, right? We don't want
that
to.
That is right. Yeah.
That's right. So, Joanna, why don't you share then? You went through a lot of history with Northaven. I know you and I, when we talked prior to this interview, we were talking about the assassination of John F. Kennedy and your experience with that. So, you start where you want to start, but that's one.
Okay. Well, I'll start there. I will say, and I'll repeat that that the past history is important, but the important thing is what we decide, what we need to be doing and speaking to now. If you know some of the history of Northaven, you know that it has always spoken to the issues of the day, and that's what we're trying to find out, how to respond to things today. But yes, I will kind of focus on some of the older history simply because some of the newer members may not know some of that history. Not that it's better than, but that this is part of our who we are. I joined in '63, and the issues at that time were these just international theologians who were writing and all kinds of important things going on in theological discussions, and Northaven members were doing serious study of that theology. Mm-hmm. And then November 22nd happened and the assassination. And that Sunday after the assassination, Bill Holmes' sermon was entitled "One Thing Worse Than This." And what he said in that sermon was, one thing worse than this is if the citizens of Dallas choose to ignore and say we take no responsibility for what happened here. There had been a number of incidents of things that had happened in the recent past. Bill Holmes said that the leadership was acquiescent to some of the extremist views that were around. Vice President Johnson had been spat upon not too long before. The day Kennedy arrived was a big full-page ad, very accusatory toward Kennedy. And he used the illustration of fourth grade children clapping at the announcement of Kennedy's death. Mm-hmm. And so he spoke about that. And then that evening, the single adult group was meeting, and all of us who were teachers had had incidents of some children responding with pleasure or clapping or thinking this is a good thing. And I was not the teacher who gave him the incident that he reported on in his sermon, but there were several of us in the group who taught, and we could all attest to that this was children reacting to what they had heard from their parents. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was in the 5th grade and the paper came out that Stalin had died, and I remember asking my mother, "Is this a good thing?" And she said, "The death of a person is not the death of an idea." Mm-hmm. And I remembered that over the years. That was significant to me. So later that night, after the meeting, one of the members of the single adult group called me and said, "Holmes is in hiding. There have been threats against his life for the statement he made about Dallas and about the children." The leaders of Dallas were very concerned about image, and they did not want anything negative said. And so he was under police protection that night. And he said the radio station that's been reporting this says they don't have anybody, they're calling Holmes a liar and nobody to counter that, and asked if I would call the radio station. So I did.
Good for you.
Not
Yay.
thinking a whole lot about it, and it created more of a incident than I had thought it might. But he continued to stand by his statement, and Dallas did change. The leadership became more open. Elections were more open. The people became very involved in precinct meetings the next time around. So there were some changes that did happen because of that.
Because the people standing up, because the people standing up and being active and
yes,
and challenging.
and speaking against some of the negativity that was going on at the time.
Mhm.
Then in the late 60s and early 70s, we had school integration, we had the Vietnam War, we had the feminist movement. All of these things were happening. And McIlvaney and Peter Johnson, and I think you're going to be interviewing Peter Johnson in this series, I believe.
Mhm.
They worked together with Block Partnership and with fair housing issues.
Mhm.
And then later, when Roton was here, Roton Smith, we had a pretty extensive partnership with Warren United Methodist. Our former organist and church member, Anna Marie Harkey, became organist at Warren. Our pastors exchanged pulpits. And I was involved in a women's group of members from Warren and members from Northaven. And we met long enough. I don't remember how long we met, but we met long enough that the Warren members at Warren, the African American members there, could trust us to be open and talk to us. And so that was a significant period of conversation that I was glad to be a part of. The Vietnam War, this came up. McIlvaney preached about it from the pulpit. People in the church marched. We studied it. It was some things came from the church board, some came from the pulpit, some came from individual members, but we were definitely speaking out here. And then later, during Bill Slack's pastorate, we sponsored 2 Vietnamese families, at least 2, that we helped them resettle here. And that took a lot of people, helping them learn all they had to learn to adapt to a totally different way of life. Mm-hmm. And these were refugees from Vietnam, and a lot of people were involved in that. And then the co-op school was founded. A group in the church were discussing women's issues that were coming up at the time, and they were also concerned with school integration. And so the co-op school was actually founded with an attempt to communicate during the period of school integration. And we had some of the parents of the African American students could not participate because they were working and did not have flexibility in their jobs like the parents of many of the Anglo students. Mm-hmm. And so some of the church members then became sort of grandparents to them and took over the parenting, because in the co-op school, parents had to participate. And so some of our Northaven members became the grandparents for those African American students. And
I love that.
yeah, it was interesting what we all learned about that. Then okay, I think that covers that part of it. Then on the lesbian and gay issues that came up in 1978, when Dee Wixton was here, Northaven hosted a homosexuality in the church conference, and that was, as I think, one of the earlier times that we were beginning to discuss this. Then by the late 80s, we had a committee on how can Northaven respond, and Shirley Switzer led this, and a lot of discussion about the reconciling congregations and Northaven's response. And then when Shirley became ill, Ken took over at one point on that, and our high school daughter was in that group, and some people didn't think that was quite appropriate. There was not a lot of dispute or discussion, but some people really were concerned about our finances and whether we didn't want to be a gay church and that sort of thing. And then we made the decision then in 98, I believe, was the decision to become a reconciling congregation. So that conversation took place over a period of time. But let's see, what else did I have on here? So that some issues are short-term, some are long-term, some keep coming up in different ways. Mm-hmm. Housing, race, peace, war, the gay issue, those surface, but we also have covered a lot of things that were coming up at the time. We have to look and find different ways. Who knew that our building would literally become a screen for Preston Road? Yes. On Black Lives Matter. I don't know all the answers, but I know we have to ask the questions and we have to act. And Northaven has done that repeatedly over time.
That's what I'm picking up, Joanna. I just love the history and the flow that you just did. And there's many things that I was not even aware of, like the partnership with Warren United Methodist Church in that connection there with other African American women. We did that. We've had other churches. We've had, different programs have occurred over the years, and certain threads do continue. And it always is, what is the most effective thing to be doing at this point? Yeah, so we look at today, in our strive to, we know all the racism or the challenges with with the justice system, the police force, and all, and all of those. The segregation really continues with housing, and those types of things. What do you feel? Where do you think Dallas has moved forward? Has fallen? How do you see Dallas today?
Well, I think we've definitely moved forward, but there are residual problems that are still there, and new issues arrive as we move forward. Then there are other things we have to realize we have to tend to. Mm-hmm. So I think it's always trying to see how can we be most effective today with what's going on. And we've Northaven has shifted gears and done different things over the years, but justice, mercy. I've seen different preachers use different, things, those sides of the coin together. But it's always trying to see what's going to be most effective and move us forward in ways we think we should be moving.
Well, what I picked up from you, and which is I think is the thing, is there's so much going on and there's so much division, right? So, and it's hard. Where do we start? What do we do? It can be so overwhelming, you know. And when I listen to your story, the history that you shared and the activity that occurred, is that we got to continue to use our voice. We have to continue to work together, and not be silent and not be afraid.
Yes.
Not be afraid.
I think that is it. And Northaven has spoken in different ways at different times, but usually we've had something to say about the various issues that are confronting us. And while the issues change, there is also, unfortunately, some similarity in what we're trying to do to.
Well, if I was to ask you, Joanna, you know, just of all the things that we just talked about, there's so many things going on. Where do you feel, if you were, you know, and this is not kind of commit you to anything, but where do you feel of the top issues that are going on in Dallas with racism and with housing or whatever? Where do you feel we should focus? Of the top three, or you think there might be?
I don't know. We are still struggling with voting rights. We're still struggling with black-white issues. We're still struggling with police issues. They all get connected at one point or another, it seems like. I think we've done different things over the years, but they all seem interrelated.
Yeah. So we got to keep the dialogue going and just work together and keep moving. And I mean, not be afraid to pick up the phone and call, and not be afraid to take, you know, to march or whatever needs to be done.
Sometimes it's marching, sometimes it's individuals in different areas who are working all over the city and other countries. There are different ways we can, and to some extent we have to be working on all those fronts. I think that's the struggle, is where can we be most effective at the present. I think the issues of the voting rights and the prison reform, police equity, you know, all of these, we need, you know, fair and equal treatment of all has to be watched over and over again. And sometimes you think we're doing the same thing, but it moves, it changes.
And sometimes we need to keep doing the same thing. You know? That's the model,
sometimes, right? Okay, we've said this before, but here's where we need to focus now on this same issue, and we have to keep at it and keep working on it. There were, I don't know, it seems like I'm blanking on where we need to go from here.
Well, I think that's the whole deal. We need a dialogue about it more. I think we all getting kind of blank. Where do we need to, you know, focus? Because all of those things are very, very important, especially the voting suppression that's going on right now, the difficulty, and to a class, to people of color, making it more difficult, so we know what the purpose is, so, or it feels that way. So I think we just have to keep talking about it and using our voice and taking action. So
Yes.
But there's a lot of things going on. I think I feel confident with with our new chief of police that you're making progress. It sounds like, or it feels like, that was a good move, in maybe, we'll see. But anyway, I want to say thank you for you. I met you in a committee and got to know you. That's how I got to know you. And you helped me. You taught me and educated me on the committees. And I appreciate all that you've given me. And thank you for all that you've given Northaven and your many gifts and talents. We really appreciate you and love you. And so it's been good to see you at church as well. So.
Okay, well, and I was going to say the Charles Wesley hymn, "A Charge to Keep I Have," second verse says, "To serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my master's will." You can do what you want with the master language there, but that is still true, to serve the present age, and that's what we continue to work on. And the issues change, but they don't change. We still have to just keep trying to make sure that all people have a voice, and that the voice is heard. And whether it's voting, or whether it's prison reform or police reform, or there are always new ways to do a better job.
Oh, I love that. Use our voice, and there's always new ways to do our job. What a great way to close this. This is beautiful. Thank you, Joanna, and thank you for taking the time to share the history and your thoughts. We appreciate you. So I love it. So have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.
You too.
Bye-bye.